Okay. Being 7:01 p.m., I'm calling to order the Clinton Board of Selectmen meeting for Wednesday, June 3rd. First item on our agenda is public comment. Is there any public comment? There being none, next item on the agenda is review of minutes from May 20th, 2020. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chair, I move we accept the minutes of May 20, 2020 as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Next up is Steve Lipka and Tom Bonsi, the Board of Health. Give us an update on COVID-19 state reopening plan.
Can we get him first?
Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Okay.
Evening, guys.
Good evening.
Gentlemen?
Talked to the public health nurse, Tom Bonsi, Board of Health. Talked to the public health nurse today. We had 225 confirmed cases in the town of Clinton. Right now, as of today, we're monitoring 43, and we have 182 that are off quarantine. So 2 days in a row, we have had not one new case. So, which looks good for us.
Okay.
So with that information, we're looking to follow along the governor's lines of starting to reopen. We're recommending that town offices open, limited capacity, with a mass social distancing, the libraries, senior center, parks and rec, retail limited, I guess restaurants. He hasn't set forth all the guidelines for us yet, but we anticipate having them shortly. And what we would encourage people to do is give us a call on Monday, and maybe we can point them in the right direction as to what they can do, what they can't do. But they could also look for the information online at mass.gov, reopen in Massachusetts. I don't know if you guys have any questions.
He's coming
Later on this evening,
on Saturday.
we'll be having a conversation about scheduling or finalizing plans for a town meeting. Depending on the location that the Board of Selectmen ultimately picks, would you be willing to give guidelines on how we should operate that? I'm not asking you to do it now until we've picked the location, but provide the town administrator with the guidelines the Board of Health recommends for either one of the locations we're considering.
Sure. What are the locations?
Town Hall
Okay.
and or Veterans Field.
Okay. Sure.
So once that decision is made, we'll request that you provide the public health guidelines for that type of use.
Sure.
Okay.
Glad to.
Absolutely.
Anyone have any questions for the Board of Health?
Yes, Steve, the gentleman with you. When you say town hall and the library, et cetera, can open, is that as of now or as of June 8th? In
June 8th.
Phase 2?
June 8th is
So
when
it'll be
phase 2
phase 2.
starts.
And so we don't have the details. Phase 2, restaurants can do outside seating, retail stores can be open, et cetera, but we don't have the details of
That's
from
correct.
from the governor and from the state of how that would work. Okay, that was my only question. All
Yeah,
right.
it should be any day now. And when we have them, we'll be more than happy to share them with anybody who's looking for information. But it'll be restricted, obviously, probably along the lines of occupancy, maybe 40%. That's what we're anticipating.
But we'll go to every location.
Yeah, we'll go to every store, every location, let them know, show them a copy of what the guidelines are, and go from there.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I just have one question. Is there any sort of guidance or anything to do with masks in these town buildings when we reopen them, or are those going to be optional?
Well, we would recommend they wear a mask and follow social distancing. Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, anyone else? If you gentlemen don't have anything else for us, I'm sure you will later.
Well,
So,
Well, good.
he
All right.
comes back out on Saturday, we'll know more.
yep,
Thank you.
thank you. We had Matt Cobus, Fuller Field discussion on our agenda, but he's not here this evening. He couldn't make it. I thought we were going to have a letter, but there's nothing from Fuller Field, from Matt.
They asked him to be removed from the agenda.
Okay. Next item is SQ Cosway Cannabis Transportation Company. Do we have someone from that organization here or on?
Hi, yes, this is Jay Myers, and Robert Burney is also with me. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Bob, I think your mic maybe is still muted.
Yeah, I can do that.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
I want to thank the board for including us in tonight's agenda. As I mentioned, I'm presenting with Bob Burney, who's the CEO of SQ Cosway, which is a tech provider in the cannabis industry. So it's a little different from other marijuana establishments, although it does qualify as a marijuana establishment that needs a host community agreement under state law, which we'll get into. We provided the board with some materials in advance, and they're detailed, so we'll give you an overview. We're happy to answer any questions. Bob is probably the best person to do that. Anything that comes up, please feel free to ask. But we're here to provide an overview of SQ Cosway and what they do and what they contribute to Clinton, to answer your questions, and also to request authorization from the board that we can begin negotiating the host community agreement with the town as part of the presentation. So Bob, I'll hand it over to you to start off on the deck and sort of go through everything.
Yeah. Hey guys, how you doing? Bob Verdi, I represent SQ Cosway. We're looking to put basically a delivery operation there where it would only be for, it's going to be a data service. It's going to be data, it'll be for recreational delivery. There'll be no product stored there at all. Nothing, there'll be minimal signage, no one coming in and out. It's just going to be mostly for data services. Most of our trucks have been coming out of Plymouth, Mass. And we're looking to get into recreational delivery at this point.
So largely, just to explain, as I'm sure you're familiar, and I know the town tracks this pretty closely, Massachusetts created a regulatory framework for delivery back in, I believe, December, maybe January. It's limited only to social equity, economic empowerment applicants for 2 years. That's 2 years beginning when the first license is given. Bob has gone through the social equity program. It's a pretty rigorous program. It's the only one in the country, just graduated from it. And his company is going to be the tech basis behind how deliveries actually happen. The cars will be elsewhere. The products will be elsewhere. It'll be at the retailer. So unless it's at a retailer in Clinton, it's not going to be here. The cash and the gambling will be elsewhere. But we're looking for a place to make the home for the tech behind the delivery service. So when you log on to the platform, it's going to be SQ Cosway that's facilitating that, linking everybody up, because as I imagine many are familiar with, retailers need to sort of be independent from delivery companies. There's third-party tech providers. There's all these different groups involved. Bob's Group is going to be the hub for that. Currently, there are no companies licensed to be delivery licensees in Massachusetts. We're hoping Bob's is going to be the first. And Bob has identified some land, a building, and he has been talking to a broker in Clinton. And I've mentioned to him my past experience working with the town and how great the town has been in regards to the industry. And this is sort of a different one, but it's new and it's different, and we hope to sort of establish Clinton as being the hub for delivery in the state. Bob's company to us being the first one to launch.
I have a question. Are the deliveries strictly retail sales deliveries, or is it for the commercial manufacturers as well?
Strictly home delivery.
So,
Retail home delivery.
and we have 2 potential retail facilities opening in town. Would you conceivably be offering delivery services for those enterprises?
If we had a partnership with a local dispensary, yeah, foreseeable, yeah, if that was possible, yeah.
Okay. Other than that, there wouldn't be any real impact on the community traffic-wise or vehicular-wise or parking-wise?
I mean, this is really no different from your typical office. In all honesty, like, the state made this a marijuana establishment, you know, under their definition, but this is gonna be no different, you know, it's gonna be computers and people going in and out to do your sort of standard office work. It's not gonna look any different from your typical.
There should be no foot traffic whatsoever, 1 or 2 office people to start, and that's it to start.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions?
Yes, I have a
Mike?
question. I'm just wanting to get an idea, Mr. Verney, of how your business works. So here I am in my home, a consumer, and I want to buy an eighth of an ounce of marijuana. So who do I call? Do I call a dispensary that you have an agreement with, or can I call the dispensary over in Hudson or Leicester or wherever I choose? So sort of give me a breakdown of how this works.
Well, depending on the dispensary you call, if you call a dispensary we did have a partnership with, then you would again pick your product, they would call us, the truck would come from point A to point B to the dispensary, and then to your house.
Okay, a truck.
Yes.
Um,
A van.
You would have a big-
Small van.
A small van.
Body cams, security for whatever per the CCC asks.
Okay.
Those vans, they would not be in Clinton necessarily.
Uh-huh.
It's just all the logistics of it would be in.
Well, no, I was just trying to figure out how it worked, whether I could call any dispensary I wanted, or whether I had to know what dispensaries Mr. Verney's company was. I'm just trying to understand the business, I guess. So it would be a dispensary that has an agreement with Mr. Verney's business.
Yes.
Same as the food delivery companies.
Very simple.
Not much different from that. Okay, fine.
Sean?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Normally, our host community agreements have some kind of compensation as far as public service services that might be impacted. Is there, I guess this is the first one of these?
Yes, this will be the first one.
Okay. So we'll have to...
Conceivably, it could be the first one in the state.
Okay. So we'll be treading on new ground. We'll have to sort that out.
Look into that.
Okay.
The compensation.
Great.
I don't think we dive into the other host community.
Is there a like with the other, with the manufacturers, we have a sales tax percentage as well as the community host agreement. Is there something like that attached to this process?
No, there's not.
Okay.
They're just delivering it.
Right.
So.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions? Ed?
No, I'm good.
What you need from this board right now is a motion to enter into negotiations for a community host agreement, I believe. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chair, I move we enter into negotiations with SQ Cosway, Cannabis Transportation Company, to establish a host community agreement.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion?
Just briefly, I mean, I think it's a great idea. I know a lot of people who rely on this for pain medications are often housebound, and especially during this time where it's tough for people to get out. I think it's a good service, and hopefully we can work out something that's beneficial to both parties.
Anyone else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Thank you,
luck, Mr.
gentlemen.
Bernie.
Good luck with your business.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay, next up is discussion with Mary Bakiel and Laura Taylor regarding 2020 Old Home Day event postponement. Are they out there?
We are.
Okay. Do you want to present, is that Laura? Do you want to present to us your
I'm
concern?
going to have Mary do it. I think she needs to unmute herself. So.
Yep, she should be good. She's
All
good.
right, I think I'm unmuted now.
We can hear you.
All right, great. We have a lot of vendors that are visiting our website and actually calling Laura and I about our cancellation. All of the surrounding towns have all canceled Because honestly, the Old Town Day Committee cannot monitor security issues with the masks and, distancing, social distancing. So we really need to think about canceling this at this point.
Is that your recommendation?
It is definitely my recommendation.
The old,
I've talked to the two largest vendors we have, and they are willing to forego any penalties and just roll it over into next year. But that brings up another factor, that Old Home Day was given, I believe it was 20 grand at the institution when we first started this in 2000. And I believe it was 20 grand. And we are down to, I believe it's 13 now. So there is not going to be even enough to run an Old Home Day in 2021 unless we have another support from the Selectmen.
okay, let's take one thing at a time. Is the Old Home Day Committee recommending cancellation of this year's event?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, sadly we are. It's, Old Home Day, the vendors that come, whether they're selling food or whether they're selling items in the park, this is their major fundraiser. And we're kind of nervous that people aren't going to be coming. And the Beer and Wine Festival, that's always packed with 300+ people in a small space. I guess since things are really still so unclear and up in the air, I don't know how we could keep people away, separate vendors, keep people apart as they're walking up and down the park, monitor if everyone has on a mask, is there hand sanitizer. I'm just afraid that our vendors, the biggest thing is that our vendors and the civic groups that come and spend the money to be in the park and use this as their major fundraiser are not going to get the return that they're used to getting.
So,
And I would hate to do that to them, and seeing that Oldham Sterling and the Boston Marathon, which is that same weekend, have all canceled. I just think it's wise to follow suit. I hate to say it, I've been on the committee, this would have been my 15th year, so this is something that my first parade, the first year we lived in town, I was pregnant with my son and went to the Old Home Day Parade. So I love Old Home Day, but I think we have to think of the people coming into the town, the people in the town, our civic groups, our vendors, and will this really be the day that they envision? And also, what would we have for, on the other side, what if somebody did get sick at the event? What if does the town have insurance to cover that? Does Old Home Day have insurance to cover it? Our liability? I don't know.
okay. What's the pleasure of the board regarding cancellation of the
Is it
event?
our business to cancel it, or?
It is now a town event, so
Oh, okay.
Mr. Chair, I move we cancel the 2020 Old Home Day.
Second.
any discussion? Nobody takes pleasure
obviously with regret.
in doing this, but it's
Exactly.
necessary at this time. Any other discussion? There being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. On the other issue you raised, I don't think we're prepared to discuss finances for next year right now, but over the past couple of years, the town has increased its contribution from the Civic Fund to the Old Home Day event, and I'm sure during the prior to next year's event, we can sit down and have a conversation about the finances of the event itself.
Okay.
Okay.
Good. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for everything you do for the town, and we understand nobody wanted to cancel this, and it's the situation we're in right now.
Yeah, it's crazy. Thank you so much.
Thank you for everything you do for the town.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, Discover Clinton. Lauren Nanoff? Is there anyone out there? Okay.
Yeah, she's on mute still.
Yeah, it's good.
Sorry. I'm here with Carrie Sala as well, our Vice President. Thank you for giving us the platform tonight to speak upon what we have been doing and what we continue to do. I just want to give a brief background to clarify what Discover Clinton is. We are usually and have been known as the group that runs Halloween walk, sidewalk sales, and shop local day. Last March is when we really began to revitalize the organization into a business cooperative. And this past February is when we officially brought the organization up to status, established a board, and began our strategic plan. We are separate from the town, but work with the town for betterment of business and community development. Luckily, right when we reestablished ourselves this past February, we were able to get a marketing subcommittee up and going, which is really what kept us on our feet. What we have done so far is right from the start of when COVID-19 happened, we did a neighborhood walking art show where the community displayed their works of art on doors and windows for people to see as they were walking around. We created a virtual tip jar for local businesses and the servers. We worked alongside Phil in researching the Resiliency fund that the town has. Carrie Sala and Bill Spencer, who's our treasurer, worked diligently with him to help with this. We also created a running list on our Facebook page of restaurants that were open or who had changed their services, which kept everyone up to date, and it was a tremendous help from community members relaying what information they were finding from calling businesses. We created an Instagram account to promote our social media presence, grew our Facebook page by 80%, and we started a website which is, we believe, going to serve as a resource and as a business directory for the community by promoting local businesses and giving them a trafficked platform. It's discoverclintonma.com. We're still working on it, so it's a little bit under construction. We also, as many people have enjoyed watching, our COVID conversations where Vice President Carrie Sala records short, meaningful conversations with business owners on Zoom and discusses how the businesses have been impacted by the shutdown and asks how we can support them. These have been extremely popular, very well liked, and it also is a benefit to drive business into these restaurants and establishments she was interviewing. We then created Signs of Hope, which are DIY signs, yard signs, which we raised $1,100 to be given to wheat and essential employees by purchasing t-shirts through our t-shirt project. This is now reopened, so I encourage people of the community to buy signs, and this time the second round is going to be deposited into our small business relief fund for costs businesses have to deal with regarding COVID protocols. Currently, we are distributing buy local signs for businesses to display in their windows. They're free signs from Discover Clinton. They just show unity, and people can fill in the blank on how the community can support them right now. We're working on our strategic plan, which will be a way to compile all our ideas and goals and document how we're working hand in hand with several other groups from town. With help from Jeff Swan, we were set up on HubSpot, which is our marketing and community service software where we keep track of business contacts, send out emails, and keep track of tasks. We're currently running the Discover Clinton t-shirt project with Corner Sports, which are design t-shirts by Discover Clinton, sold for $20 each, and all proceeds will be put into our relief fund, which will be distributed to local businesses. We are working with local businesses to create bulk pricing for them in the same version of the t-shirt, but with their business name customized on the back. We are working on creating weekly events, restaurant spotlight nights, where the restaurants have their own assigned day on the monthly calendar. And the goal of that is on their assigned day for people of the community to flood that businesses with calls for takeouts. We encourage businesses to set up their menu ahead of time as if they're doing a catered meal, so it might be easier for them to operate. We are currently working with Growing Places and the Rotary Club to move forward with a maintenance plan and the street appearance of the community garden to bring it back to the original purpose, which was a beautiful space for the community to enjoy. And finally, the Discover Clinton board voted in favor of accepting a sum of money totaling $100,000 to be used as a revolving loan fund as relief from expenses caused by COVID-19, which is similar to the town's loan initiative. This opportunity was introduced to us by Phil Duffy, fellow board member. We will also be rolling out grants of money from this fund to be used to help with costs accrued during businesses' reopening phase to buy PPE, disinfection, or new structures they need to put in place. So I encourage business owners to please visit www.discoverclintonma.com, join-discover-clinton to make sure they're up to date with all this information about the organization, so we can get announcements out to them as soon as possible regarding this funding as well as others they have on the track. And that is it.
Thank you. Does any members have any questions or comments regarding Discover Clinton?
Mr. Chair, I want to say from being involved in this, in Discover Clinton, it's part of me, it's unfortunate right when it started to get rolling, a bomb got dropped with COVID. And for Discover Clinton to switch gears like they have and really, and with cooperation with Phil Duffy, the service that they've provided to small businesses, I don't know, I really don't know what we would have done. I don't know what a lot of businesses would have done if Discover Clinton wasn't up and running when this unfortunate COVID pandemic hit. So I just, myself personally, and I'm sure, on behalf of the board and other people will have stuff to say too, I just really want to thank Discover Clinton and thank Phil Duffy for a lot of the hard work that you guys have been doing the last couple months, and I'm just glad that at this meeting you finally got a little bit of a platform to explain what you've been doing, and not only explain what you've been doing, but hopefully to get the word out too. There may still be some small businesses in town that are unaware of what you guys can do to help them out. So I just want to thank you guys for all your great work, and keep it up, and anything that we can do to help you out, please let us know.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Anyone else have anything to say? Sean?
Mr. Chair. Yeah, I just want to echo what Ed said. I know when I got on the board 3 years ago, this was the kind of partnership that I always dreamed of, and it's once you get here and you see the challenges of just getting people together, it's a classic herding cats situation, and to have some investment from the business community themselves and some cooperation with what we do here at Town Hall. It's really inspiring, and I'm really glad that you guys have stepped up and taken this over, because it's a great asset for the town. It's great for what we're hoping to do on High Street and the whole downtown business district. And like I said, it's a partnership I always hoped we could get, and I'm glad we're starting on the right foot.
And personally, I want to thank you for everything you're doing for the town of Clinton and the business community in Clinton. It's a substantial effort, and it helps us make us more of a community. So thank you.
Agreed.
That it? Thank you.
Keep in touch.
Next item on our agenda is Clinton's Bar and Grill outdoor dining space request. Subsequent to that one, we picked one up or a letter was sent in from Simple Man's and also for Wrong Way Cafe. Right after this, we have an agenda item with Mr. Duffy to discuss the same subject, basically. But to lead into Mr. Duffy's, is the board willing to authorize, what's the matter? Oh, he's here? I don't see him. Mr. Souza, just hold on for 1 second. Should we wait until after we hear Mr. Duffy before we act on these requests?
Yeah, whatever you guys want to do.
Just hold on for a second.
Yeah, if we can, I think it might make sense to go out of order.
To go, everyone comfortable with going out of order, having Mr. Duffy discuss it in general, and then we'll get specific?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, Mr. Souza, just hold off for a few minutes. We're going to discuss this issue in a general way, and then we'll get back.
Just let me know when you're ready.
Okay.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, I propose we'll just discuss this particular issue, then return to Mr. Souza and come back to me later for the other parts of the agenda. I haven't seen the letter from John Page at the Simple Man or from The Wrong Way, but just as background, as you all know, restaurants are scheduled to begin reopening on June 8th under Phase 2 of the state's coronavirus reopening plan. On Monday afternoon, Executive Order 35 was issued, which basically gave some broad outline in terms of what the circumstances and requirements are of restaurants reopening. One thing that was learned only Monday was that restaurants will only be allowed to seat people out of doors. There will be no indoor seating. The executive order, in addition to indicating that, requires that municipalities establish a process for receiving and reviewing applications for outdoor dining. So in that spirit, I'm coming to you first to describe a process that I believe we should follow in terms of reviewing these applications. And if it's your desire to vote on a motion this evening, then we can begin to initiate that and see if we can get it rolling up for next week. Effectively, I'm going to read my memo. You have to forgive me. It might be the easiest thing to do. As I described, we're required to establish a procedure for review. Currently, the local licensing authority, both for liquor and for outdoor dining, is the Board of Selectmen, so I propose that the Board of Selectmen continue in that capacity. But I ask that this board consider delegating the responsibility for implementing these review and approval procedures to the town administrator. Similarly, as we did with the town's resiliency loan program, this is primarily in the interest of expediency, the ability to move more quickly than a bi-weekly schedule to address requests. I'm largely reading from information that's been circulating online between people who are my counterparts in other communities. Every community is trying to push these out quickly. I believe Worcester intended to get theirs out today. I'm not sure if they actually did. But I'm proposing that we have a review procedure that is streamlined, that solicits specific pieces of information from the applicants, and then requires the review and sign-off of key personnel in the town hall. And I've had discussions with some of these personnel, including Mr. McGowan, the DPW superintendent, and Mr. Bonsi, the health agent, and I'll have a quick conversation with Mr. Salmon, the building agent. Effectively, what is the information we need? We need to know the business's name and address. If they lease their property, we need to know that their property owner approves the request to use outdoor space. If they are proposing to use the public way, we need to get an indication of that and have a review procedure in place to review that application relative to the public interest. We need a certificate of insurance from the applicant and a waiver of indemnity if they are seeking to use the public way. We need a dimensioned plan. This doesn't need to be an architect or engineer scale or level of specificity, but we need to be able to demonstrate that they are meeting the requirements of the Phase 2 reopening plan in terms of distancing, that there are barriers in place between the serviced area and the public. If they're proposing to use tents, space heaters, any other furnishings, just to make sure that things are complying with the requirements, we will need a plan to do that. Then the review would involve necessarily the health agent to ensure that the requirements of the coronavirus implementation plan are being met. If they are proposing to do work in the public way, then it would require the DPW superintendent to sign off. They're requiring to install a temporary structure like a tent. It would require the building inspector to sign off. The key thing to think about in this, in that businesses have only the out of doors to use, and many of our businesses, particularly ones downtown, don't have any out of doors that's on private property. I would ask that the board be very flexible and accommodating and to think unconventionally about the use of our public right-of-way, including allowing our restaurants the opportunity to extend their apron in front of their storefronts, maybe to the full extent of the sidewalk, consider displacing the pedestrian path, which must be continued and must be ADA compliant, out into the roadway, eliminating parking spaces, installing some barriers or cones to delineate a walkway, allowing restaurants to colonize parking spaces, as long as they install an effective barrier against traffic, allow restaurants to take parking spaces to provide for pickup areas, these kinds of things. We have a diminished parking demand downtown because of the ongoing virus. Some key businesses, such as the gyms and the theater, are not scheduled until phase 4 to reopen, so we have a little bit of time to figure this out. So I'd suggest that we be flexible and adaptable and see how things work and make changes on the fly to our review process and the implementation as we go, because we are in uncharted territory. So that basically is the description. I would ask that you delegate the responsibility to devise these plans, this application form, and the guidelines for review to the town administrator or his designee, and that you ultimately delegate the responsibility for approval of these to the town administrator, who can act on your behalf.
I've got a couple of suggestions to make. Number one, that the police department, the police chief, be included in the sign-off.
That's a good one.
We're dealing with liquor licensing issues as well as public safety issues.
Yep.
And also that there be a limitation on this permit of say, 30 days and see how things will evolve, and we could renew them or retract them.
I would say that there's a limitation in the executive order, and that limitation is November 1st. So it's not, this isn't a forever provision.
Temporary.
It is a temporary. If we were to double check it, I might suggest that we go something longer than 30 days, because there'll be some meaningful implementation costs for some restaurants, and we probably should allow them a little bit more latitude, a little more assurance that the rug isn't going to be pulled out from under them. I don't think we have any bad actors.
It's not about bad actors, it's about unintended consequences.
I understand. I appreciate that.
Public use, public safety, impacts on parking.
Sure.
Either we put a time limit or a subject to modification at any time by the town of Clinton would be another way of dealing with unintended consequences.
And would if it were to be a timeline, I'd suggest it be more on the order of 60 days, but I leave it to your board to determine in your motion if you prefer it to be 60 days or subject to review.
I'm supportive of the idea with the expectation that it would be implemented rapidly. The businesses are authorized to open in this manner on Monday.
Yep.
Every day that we delay in making that happen for them is another lost opportunity for them to survive as a business in downtown Clinton.
Yeah, and to be honest, at least in the very short term, if restaurants don't open immediately, and I think it's responsible to have a requirement that they submit a plan. For the downtown businesses, we have fully engineered drawings right at our fingertips, and between myself and the facilities administrator, we have CAD capacity in Town Hall. We can assist businesses in devising these plans, at least in the very short term. And Mr. Chairman, if it is your permission, prior to the motion being made, if you would if Mr. Souza has anything to say on this, it might be beneficial to get his input before the motion is entered.
Especially where he's already operating a business with sidewalk issues. So, Mr. Souza?
Yes.
Do you have any comments to offer on this topic?
We want to maximize the amount of takeout we can do, and we want to maximize the amount of seating outside. If no one has a problem with it, we'd like to go all the way past, Subway, and, do some kind of take up like 6 or 7 parking spots in front, to utilize for tables, and pass it down, put a barrier around it, and, some, divide up there so that we can maximize on the weekdays as many tables as we can, because we're struggling to just stay out. We really are. We need to be able to show up all there. We already ordered food producers, which was another, expense to us, so that we can bring orders in on the fly outside, which if they don't come cheap, I think they're saying that we $6,000 each system. So we need to expedite as many tables as we can, because we put that money and just start getting people more used to coming in.
Well, assuming the board approves this suggestion, I think the details of how much sidewalk gets utilized, how many parking spots, if we defer this to the town administrator and Mr. Duffy, we can rely on them to accommodate any issue. Work with each, because each facility is going to have different issues, different details, different issues, and it's hopefully it would be the intent of this board that we help these businesses get open without negatively impacting the rest of the community.
Right, they also want to get the staff used to working under the constraint that we're going to have to. And the more people we have outside, the more people that are coming into the restaurant, the more by the time it gets into the restaurant, everything will be stabilized, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And we just want to go forward. We want to get out there and start working.
Thank you, Mr. Souza. Does anyone from the board have questions for Mr.?
No, I don't have any questions for Mr. Souza, but I just want to say, you know, the old saying, "A faint heart had never won fair maiden." I think we should consider closing down High Street in front of those restaurants and letting them use the whole part of the street. There's a member of this board who came up with this idea. He said, and I won't identify him, that he thought the best thing that could happen for High Street would be to close it down in the summer months and make it a pedestrian mall. I think we should consider doing it on a piecemeal basis for this short period of time. Just an idea. It's maybe undoable, but I mean, that's my thought.
Mainly, I go through Maine the other day, and Maine did a spectacular job there. Put up barriers, and they closed the whole street up.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. Everybody's parking in different places, and they got tables out. It's just absolutely beautiful. You know? And I wouldn't be opposed to it, even if it was just, you know, for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, let's try it and see what happens, you know? Because everybody, the coffee shop, the coffee man, the meat, the pizza place, the simple man, everybody needs to be able to serve alcohol and serve food, and we need to get that going, because I don't know how much more time is going to pass before we get onto the next level, you know? I don't think they're going to say, you know, low in dining, plan. And that can be 2 months away, you know?
Mm-hmm. My point of view on that is baby steps. I think authorizing the utilization of the sidewalks and some of the parking gets us started in this process. I'm not necessarily opposed to the suggestion of closing High Street, but I'd rather, there are other businesses involved. Retail is going to be opening. Not that people can't find alternative parking.
I'm not talking about all of High Street. I'm talking about in front of those restaurants. And there would be parking on High Street. I mean, it'd have to be worked on. Whatever the board wants to do, but I will say again, faint heart never won fair maiden.
I'm too...
I just want to reiterate what Selectman Jaconski said. I think who knows when we're going to be able to get people inside, and there's only going to be so many months of good weather, and I would rather, I understand the need for wanting to take big steps, but if we can get cooperation with some of the other businesses and find out what their parking needs would be, I think we should be a little bit aggressive with the amount of space we're willing to give up and shut down certain parts of High Street to accommodate restaurants that we can. I'd rather be a little bit more aggressive with this approach than I agree with Selectman Jaconski. I think I can't say it as eloquently as he did, but whatever that phrase was he used, I in general agree with that. I think we should really work to help the businesses out and give them as much space outside as possible to help them make some money.
I don't disagree, Ed. I believe anything we can do to help these businesses keep going is a great thing. But there are other businesses on High Street. We haven't entertained the impact on them at all, and it's not part of High Street. If you're going to close the street for Simple Man and Clinton's Bar and Grill, you're shutting down High Street. There's from people going to the bank, people going to whatever other businesses are on the street. And I think implementing a major change like that takes a little more planning and a little more thought before we jump into it. That's my point of view. But whatever the board decides, but could we have a motion on the recommendation from the Economic Development Director?
Mr. Chair, I move that the Board of Selectmen delegate responsibility to the town administrator or his designee for the implementation of local review and approval procedures for expansion of outdoor table service, subject to review by town council. I'm going to ask for 90 days or subject to review.
I'll second that motion.
Is there any other discussion on that motion?
Mr. Chair,
Sean.
just to back up what I think everybody's saying, it's an awful, awful time to be alive, and especially if you're trying to run a business. Just when downtown is supposed to be taking off, we've had the rug pulled out from underneath us. So I want to give Phil a lot of credit here for acting nimbly to come up with something like this. I would never want to cut corners when it comes to public safety or public health, but I really think this is an opportunity, if there's going to be any good that comes out of this, that we can use this crisis to turn High Street into a laboratory or a workshop and to try this out. If we have to expand expand sidewalk seating, see how that works. Try some parking spots. If it doesn't work, we're going to make some mistakes, and there's going to be some forward and some back, and maybe we'll want to try for a weekend, a Saturday, to shut down part of it. Let's try some things. Like, this is a chance, and who knows what's going to work when we put the $4.5 million into downtown. Some of this stuff could be a real blueprint for a tremendous success story. So thank you for the patience of the business owners. I know it's not been easy. We're following along just like you guys are. But between this and Discover Clinton, and I think it's a real aggressive but not foolhardy. It's just, I think it's a real smart thing to do, to try some easy, incremental ways to cut red tape, to let these people reopen and try some new things that maybe we should have been doing all along. So thank you, Phil. Good luck to the businesses. Hopefully we're back to normal soon, and hopefully we can come up with some great ideas out of this experiment.
And, Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to echo what Mr. Kerrigan said. Certainly, we couldn't just shut down High Street come June 8th without consulting with some of the other businesses. But I think that it would be important to consult with some of those other businesses and see if there is a way that some expanded seating for the restaurants that are on High Street beyond the parking could be done. I think we should look into it, and I think we should look into it quickly and have an open mind about it. Perhaps just try, as Mr. Kerrigan said, try on a Saturday night, a Saturday evening.
Perfect.
Down the road.
Yeah. And just see how it works. I mean, I think, you know what? I think if there was a big swatches of High Street where you could come down in the spring, summer, and fall and have a meal outside, sitting on High Street, having a beer, and walking back to your car, I think that place would be jumping. So I'm prepared to vote for the motion. That's my thoughts on it.
And I agree exactly Sean's idea of, just a minute, just a minute. I think that's a great idea. Get some of these businesses up and running on outdoor seating on High Street, because right now it's the only way they're going to be able to operate. Yeah. And explore how it would work with other businesses, and shut it down for a Friday afternoon, evening, and Saturday, when we know it's supported by even the businesses that got to run the restaurants, and see how it goes. I think that's a great idea. But if this article, this motion as it was presented passes, I want to make sure that we all agree that it's clear to the town administrator that we want this implemented rapidly and flexibly with the businesses. we might be taking a couple of shortcuts, taking a couple of chances, and we could be making mistakes, but anything's correctable. And the idea of this is that it starts now, not 2 weeks from now.
This is no time to sit on our hands.
Right. Is there any other discussion? There being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Yes, sir.
So I have a friend of mine is a police officer in Maine, and they said that they fed on Main Street where it was closed down completely. Saturday and Sunday, they fed over 1,200 people drinking and eating at the Main Street tables. That's a big number.
That's great.
We do 400 when we were open on a Saturday night. That's a big number.
Okay, well, hopefully we have some big numbers, and this works out for all the businesses, because they're very important to the town of Clinton and our whole sense of being a community. So this could be a start of a whole great new thing for High Street.
Mr. Chairman, can I pose a question to Mr. Duffy before we...
Sure.
I'm curious, so the downtown renovation project just indefinitely on hold? Because, I mean, we can't be tearing up the street if we're gonna be having restaurants, people eating on the streets.
No, it's not on hold. What we're talking about in terms of the specifications is trying to phase the project, ideally starting at the north end of High Street and working our way back. We've kind of done an inventory of the businesses that might need outdoor service. The Liberty Tavern is the only one up there that probably doesn't have the capacity to absorb the demand. Well, it's interesting because no one is expecting that the restaurants couldn't have, everyone was expecting 25% indoor seating. The zero indoor seating is really kind of a thing. But you have P&S and Mr. Z's up there who could, Mr. Z's can accommodate their own outdoor seating anyway. P&S, you don't have a lot of people sitting indoors. They normally have 3 or 4 people in there at a time, and they could fit 3 or 4 people in at a time. Sunshine is down below. Presto only has 2 indoor seats. The Liberty Tavern is something we have to figure out. I don't know if, Mr. Bertram actually owns Batista Court and the other streets. Maybe he can colonize, because he's got the 2 drives that come up on both sides of the property. Maybe one of them can be colonized for outdoor use. In short, Ed, it's not on hold, but we are trying to think about how we can phase the project to minimize the impact on businesses that are going to need to be outdoors.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on, Mr. Duffy.
Oh,
you
back again, aren't we?
have the table now.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is the modification of the Business Resiliency Program. I'm here to give you an update on the program to date and to request your permission to make 2 modifications to the program moving forward. You may recall that in a meeting at the end of March, your board authorized up to $150,000 from the Community Development Fund to be used to create a resiliency loan program. With the assistance of an able attorney and an able banker, who so far remain nameless, we've been able to run what I think is an effective program. I'm just going to give you some of the data. We have made 21 loans, totaling $102,570. These loans have supported 21 businesses, and if this program works, based on the reporting on the applications, if this program works, it will have helped to preserve 61 full-time jobs and 81 part-time jobs. So if you can preserve 140 jobs for $102,000, that's the best money you can possibly spend as a municipality. It has been successful. Right now, we only have, I think, 4 applications outstanding. 1 was received this week. 1 was deferred for action. And then 2 others were from applicants who were not eligible under our first-round guidelines. Our first-round guidelines asked businesses to document losses from the period of March 10th to April 30th, and was limited to businesses that either had a physical presence in Clinton as manifest by a commercial lease or mortgage, or employed at least 1 person to whom they withheld wages. Would like to propose 2 modifications of the program moving forward. One is that we extended the time for reported losses from April 30th to June 30th, and that also that the board consider receiving applications from self-employed individuals to document loss of business for their sole or principal business. These are a group of people who I was concerned about, people who operate out of the back of a truck, for instance, single contractors. Fortunately, there's a wide range of people who are self-employed, including people who are like selling Tupperware or something, that kind of stuff. There are some businesses who applied that weren't eligible for being self-employed. Those self-employed individuals are currently eligible for extended unemployment under the Federal CARES Act. That provides them a state benefit of, I think, $357 and a federal benefit of $600 to July 31st. So when that program was enrolled, it's actually 2 weeks early by the state, kind of held in abeyance, concerned about those people. They could be, the difference between making nothing and getting $1,000 a week is the difference between eating and not eating. But moving forward, the horizon is coming up on that. And because there has been need expressed and we still have funds in reserve, I'd ask that the board consider modifying the program to allow application by people previously ineligible. What I would like to do on that is to maybe come back to you in 2 weeks with a finer definition of who is eligible and who may not be eligible under those circumstances. For instance, somebody who's merely supplementing their household income, with like a home-based sales business. To me, their need is, this may be a bias, but I'm not sure their need is as urgent as some of the applicants who have applied to our program. One fellow operates out of the back of his truck, but he has a pest control business. And with restaurants not open, he's not working. And this is a guy who relies on his labor to pay his bills, and and he provides a useful service. I think that's somebody we'd like to help.
So you don't want action tonight?
I think if the board felt comfortable delegating the responsibility of articulating who is eligible and who is not eligible, to me, you could take action, but quite frankly, I think that you might want to be, I'd feel better if I had articulated to you before approval, quite frankly.
That's not much of a recommendation to move forward
It
tonight.
is. It isn't now. There really isn't. But I guess from getting you feedback, I'm offering you the opportunity to provide feedback before I come back to you in 2 weeks with that modification provided.
Well, personally, Mr. Duffy, I see our role as setting policy,
Yep.
and your role and Mike's role and town council, just make sure you're honest. But the details and the regulations, I'm perfectly comfortable deferring to your judgment and Mike's judgment. Personally, I don't know what the rest of the board feels.
I have no problem with that.
I agree.
Mr. Chair, I move that we authorize a modification of the Business Resiliency Program to extend the deadline for losses from April 30th to June 30th, and to potentially expand eligibility, thank you, for self-employed and sole business purposes employees.
Is there a second?
Just, we want the motion to, I thought we wanted the motion to give the economic director the flexibility.
I'll amend if that's okay. Giving the Community Economic Development Director authority there with two.
If my help, the way I had written in my own note was to extend eligibility to self-employed applicants for loss of income due to primary employment.
Sure.
Something happened to my TV.
I'm fine with doing that specifically, but I just think if we just give Phil a little bit of flexibility.
Right.
I don't want Phil to have to keep coming before us if some other criteria, if he thinks that in a couple of weeks. I mean, this is, desperate times here, and the quicker we get the money out, the better. So I don't want to limit this motion to just, I just want the motion to say that we give the economic development director flexibility in determining eligibility, if that pleases the board.
Subject to review with the town administrator.
Fine.
Sure, I'll withdraw mine.
What?
Okay.
That one works. I'll second that one.
That sounded like a motion. That sounds like a second. And I think everyone here gets the gist of this. We want Mr. Duffy, we want this to get implemented immediately, subject to consultation and review with town administrator.
And town council.
And town council. Any other discussion? There being none, all those in favor? Aye. Unanimous.
Okay. And three other things are just informational. One is the CDBG Micro Enterprise Assistance Program funding. We received word from DHCD that they approved our amendment request. It The numbers ended up, we now have an additional $100,000 to provide to eligible micro enterprises for grants from the CDBG program. These are grants. Our program guidelines for allow grants up to $15,000, and we think it's more likely that the grants will be in the order of $10,000. In order to qualify, a business must be a micro enterprise as defined by HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Micro enterprise is a business of 5 or fewer people where one of the employees, at least one of the employees, is the owner, and that the owner or owners qualify as persons of low or moderate income under HUD guidelines. So it is a program intended to primarily to benefit people of low or moderate income. There's an income verification process that goes along with that, but it is to provide business support and relief. And it's actually a pretty good program because it's a grant, and also in this round, it'll allow the flexibility for businesses to use some of that money to maybe reorient how they do business, how they make provision of their goods or services to customers. You know, that if they need to get a social media presence, if they need to, get an online platform, in addition to the more routine kinds of assistance. These funds can be used for those kinds of things. That program, we received the word on that about a week ago, and we should have that program advertised and ready to roll by the end of the month. Next thing is also a CDBG related thing. This is the Community Development Block Grant, those might know. As part of the CARES Act, the Community Development Block Grant was given additional funds in Massachusetts. $20 million is made available to the non-entitlement communities, of which we are one. That money is going to be distributed in 2 ways. For persons needing rent or mortgage assistance as a consequence of the ongoing state of emergency, they can make application to the regional assistance agencies. These are housing agencies. I believe RCAP in Gardner and Worcester services Clinton, and they can apply directly to these agencies for rent or mortgage assistance. It again is limited to persons of low or moderate income, but this is a necessary and vital support that is being funneled through the CDBG program to residents of Clinton and towns like it, and anyone who is interested in obtaining that assistance should contact me in my office, and I will put you in touch with the right people. Secondly, in the more conventional way of CDBG, there is a competitive round, and DHCD, the Department of Housing and Community Development, has decided that in this round, funds can only be used for social services or for micro enterprise assistance. We are entering into a regional application with Webster as the lead community, and we have invited Lancaster and Sterling in our region to participate with us. We will be applying for approximately $115,000, approximately $50,000 for additional micro enterprise assistance, and $65,000 for social service supports, primarily centered around food security, with wheat as our principal sub-grantee. And that $65,000 for wheat would cover Clinton, Sterling, and Lancaster. So Clinton, it would probably be asking for something on the order of $90,000 to $100,000. These are working numbers. This is going out extraordinarily fast. If you know, in past years, our CDBG applications start in September and get delivered in December, and they're usually about this thick. This is a 2-week application period. So we are moving very quickly, and this is just on an informational basis to let you know that this is what Clinton will be applying. And then finally, was hoping to make a request for a recommendation of award for the environmental services at 172 Sterling Street. We're still negotiating a final scope of work and fee for services, but we have selected NSAFE of Manchester to negotiate a fee and services with, a fee and scope of services with. This company will come in and do the work, primarily paid for by Mass Development, to reestablish the custodial chain of records at the 172 Sterling Street, and to do environmental review and testing and monitoring so that we can begin the process of getting that site back up and rehabilitated. So I'll be coming back to you at the next meeting with the final fee and a contract for your approval.
Okay, so you don't need action tonight?
Nope, couldn't get it done.
Okay. It's on you.
Yep, and it'll be on you in 2 weeks. so.
Does anyone have any questions or observations from Mr. Duffy? Phil, thank you very much for your efforts on the community's behalf during this time of crisis for our business community, so thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Phil.
Okay, next up is discussion and actually approval of a final town meeting warrant. Does Ed have the most recent copy of the warrant?
Yeah, it was in the Dropbox thing, right, Mike?
Right.
Okay.
I have it.
All right, good. Is the board comfortable with moving through the general business articles as a group? Or do you want to go through them
I
individually?
would be comfortable moving through the whole thing as a group.
Okay, well,
Except for the one, whatever we got to remove.
there might be a couple that we have to talk about,
Okay.
but
All right.
how about I go through them and see if anyone wants to have a conversation? I'll just, Article 1, Article 2, Article 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
could
John.
we talk about changing these numbers with the Finance Committee? It's
Oh,
150.
yes.
We had talked about making this 100.
Yeah, Article 9,
And 10.
the subcommittee reviewed with the Finance Committee, given the situation we have this year, to reduce Article 9 and Article 10 to 100,000 each.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Article 11, Article 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, yes.
Is, just the facilities article, did they start on 18? I'm trying to review this.
Yeah, 18 is the splash pad.
18 splash pad?
Yes.
Facilities. My only question is, I thought we had discussed in the last meeting about possibly putting all facilities, the separate warrant articles into one warrant article?
Actually, we talked about consolidating some of the smaller ones, especially like there were 3 for the schools. This is a fairly large article, and the Finance Committee is recommending borrowing for this article, so it can't be put in the facility department budget to be borrowed, so it needs to stand alone as an article.
Fair enough. I just don't
Yep.
know what you're doing. I saw a lot of facilities related.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're right.
And I mean, just normally I like to do that anyway, and this year in particular, I mean, the faster we can get in and get out of town meeting, that's, anything we can do to kind of limit the exposure and the time for the people at the meeting is a good idea. I don't know if it's, is it possible, or was there pushback to consolidating these into the facilities and listing them, itemizing them?
If you give us a minute, we'll get to the next couple that we can consolidate.
Okay.
Okay? Article 18 is a very large, it's $180,000. It's going to be a borrowing article. It should stand alone as its own. Some of these, okay. Article 19, wait a minute, I got to check on the numbers here.
I've got you covered.
Okay, wait a minute.
That's free cash.
Borrow, transfer the civil.
20.
The chimney. The Article 20
Strike that.
is we're removing that article,
Okay.
okay? And Article 21, 19 and 21
Free cash.
are going to be taken, or recommended by the Finance Committee to take from free cash, and there's no reason why we can't consolidate those two, because they're both school building related articles.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just a clarification, there was just a typo in 19. It's not the field house at Fuller Field, it's the field house at Athletic Field up at the school. So
high
that's
school.
why the chair indicated 19 and 21 would both be school articles.
So we can combine those two and highlight what it's for in one article. Okay?
So that's
Do you
19.
motions for that? Do we need motions?
No, we'll do, unless there's objection, we'll do it as a group at the end.
19 and 21.
19 and 21 are going to be
Article 20
combined,
would stand as is.
20's gone.
deleted.
We're taking,
Article 20 is completely deleted.
Yes.
on recommendation of the facilities director, you can wait.
Okay. So that's gone, and 19 and 21 are consolidated.
Mr. Chairman, that's a free cash, that's not a borrowing.
The combined article is free cash. Although the Finance Committee can change their mind.
Don't worry about it.
I don't think they will, but I got 22.
And 23 were both going to be struck.
22 and 23 are being recommended to be removed at this time.
Why is that, Mr. Chairman?
It's the recommendation of the facility director.
Okay,
We're trying to tighten our belts here, and those are kind of nice to have that we can maybe put off.
okay.
So that was 23, was the last one?
Yeah.
24 is, I got a call from the chairman of the Finance Committee, and he wants to change his mind and recommend borrowing for Article 24.
And Mr. Chair, I would ask if the board would be okay to also put in wording in this, would be for construction and relocation of offices and phone system as well, too, where we've been having some problems lately with our phone. It's well over 21, 22 years, and it's hard to get parts, and we're having tough times. So at least if there's money left over there, if it could be used for that, after the office stuff would be the primary.
Does anyone have any objection to that
No.
change? Okay. Article 25, the Finance Committee is recommending reducing that to 30.
And putting it in the budget, right? Was
That's-
that going into the budget? Right. That's what mine is.
And that's right, it's reducing it to 30, but it's going into the facility department budget.
So it
So
would be
that's struck
eliminating
too.
that article.
So we're deleting the article, and the money's going to be in the facility department budget. 26 is recommended to be deleted. I guess it's been done.
We like those.
26?
And, oh, that's nice.
Okay. 27 is, as we've discussed, relative to changing the alcohol licenses. Article 28, this is in a Finance Committee recommendation, but I'm recommending that, given that we haven't had the opportunity to discuss this in negotiations, that the volatility of town meeting, an article like this is going to require a larger percentage to pass, and I don't think this is the time, especially if we're going to reduce the quorum at town meeting, to move forward with this article. That's my recommendation, but I need a vote from the board to delete it.
Do you want to do that now?
I would like to do that now.
Mr. Chair, I move that we delete Article 28.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I just think it's a good opportunity to talk to the union about this. It's obviously a delicate issue, and we want to make sure that we're going forward in good faith, and I think there's a good opportunity to make sure that we make sure everybody's taken care of in this.
We've at least taken the time to have the conversation, and we haven't had that. So Article 29.
Did we
What?
have a vote?
Oh, I'm sorry. All those in favor? I thought you said yes. Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you. Thanks for keeping me honest, Mike. Article 29.
Mr. Chair, for reasons that we kind of beat to death at the last selectmen's meeting, I don't need to rehash them, but I'm going to stay opposed to this. I'm going to make a motion for Article 29 to be removed from the warrant. Not expecting much of a second, but I'm going to make that motion.
I'll second for debate.
Okay, under discussion?
I'm going to keep it on.
Pardon?
I'm going to keep it on.
Ed, under discussion? You got a second?
Yeah, I mean, just to recap then, I mean, we already have the authority to appoint whoever we want. I think that I'm fine with doing like 2 members of the Parks and Rec, but I'd like to keep 3 members of the Ford Field Commission, individual dedicated only to the Ford Field Commission. So that we already kind of talked about this at the last selectmen's meeting, but just in general, those are my thoughts on that article.
I've expressed my point of view as clearly as I can. That scenario does nothing to modernize the department, to consolidate utilization of recreational facilities or improving the management of the facility. So I'm opposed to your motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'm also opposed to the motion, but I do want to say, and I spoke out forcefully against the Fuller Field Commission, which I think has done, in general, an atrocious job over the past several years. But I do have to say that there are a couple of members on that board who I think tried to do well. Things improved when Mr. Cobus came on board, and I think Mr. Merman always tried to act in the best interest of the town, but the meetings were always scheduled for when he couldn't be there. It's part of the problem of the management of that commission. So I'm going to be voting against the article.
Mr. Chair, just to be clear, this is, for me particularly, this has nothing to do with personalities or frankly past performance. I think this is the right move to going forward, and I wholeheartedly support it.
I agree with Sean. For me, this has absolutely nothing to do with past performance or the character or makeup of Fuller Field Commission. It's just an archaic, outdated method of managing a single recreation facility in the town of Clinton, and without the resources that a department like Parks and Recreation has available to it for planning, scheduling, and services to the community. So that's
Mr. Chairman,
my reason.
that's all well and good, but the fact of the matter is, if this board had performed sterlingly over the past several years, this article would not be on here.
Okay.
Just to say, we can all try to be, we're so wonderful and innocent, but if they performed well over the past several years, this article would not be on here.
And I understand your point of view, Mike, but my point of view, I've been an advocate of this since I was on Parks and Recreation Commission
Well, that was just
35 years ago, Empire Building. And it was on my agenda, and it was actually supported when I was on the Charter Commission. It was 1970 when the town's master plan came out. It was a recommendation then. I think given the track record of Parks and Recreation planning and managing the use of all the other facilities in the town of Clinton, I think it's a good move for the future. That's my point of view. Is there any other discussion? Being none, the motion is to remove Article 29. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Nay. John, Selectman Busno?
I'm going to vote with Ed.
Okay, 3-2. Article stays on the warrant. Mike, before we get to Article 30, or the current Article 30, we had discussed with the Finance Committee the idea of repurposing the previous appropriation for Vale Street, the one that Parks and Rec has declared they're going to turn back to the town. And that was 170.
I want to say about 177,000.
Right.
I'll double check that, but yeah.
Are we still okay going in that direction?
Yes,
Okay.
I think the Finance Committee had asked that the board would consider repurposing that money with the intent of borrowing the balance.
Right.
In order to fund the citizen petition. So instead of just having the citizen petition come up and look for funding, to try to find a way to finance that.
The suggestion, just so I can, and John, jump in and straighten me out when I trend off track, but there's $170,000 plus or minus $1,000 left over from a previous article to do work at Vale Street. And Parks and Rec decided to relinquish that funds rather than do something else at the field. We're proposing with the Finance Committee to repurpose that prior appropriation, utilize that 170, and so that would be one article.
Right.
And then another article subsequent to that to appropriate by borrowing the balance of $90,000.
Right, and if the board is okay with it, I mentioned it briefly to the solicitor this afternoon, it may be possible to put it all in one article if the board's okay with that. If
Sure.
not, we can split it to two, but if we're able to do both in one.
That would be great, simplifying and consolidating.
Several years ago.
Right. And we have a previous, the idea came from an earlier article on the water tank, so what's the board's feeling on doing that?
Mr. Chair, I just have a question. If we're repurposing that money, that money was appropriated through ballot vote, correct?
I don't recall that, but
I mean, the 170,000 is from the leftover from the Vale Street,
yes.
right?
Yes.
That was a ballot vote, correct?
If it was, it would have been the only thing that would make it a ballot vote would be the Finance Committee did not approve it.
I'm just going off of memory.
Yeah.
Thought that it was.
Is he talking an override, Ed?
No.
A ballot vote at town meeting?
I thought for the Vale Street, that wasn't a vote. That was just I might be totally mistaken. That was just that town meeting.
Oh, was it an override?
That's where, yeah.
That's what you don't mean by a ballot vote at town meeting. You mean a separate vote at the election.
Yeah, exactly. He's not talking about the ballot at town meeting. He's talking about, we'd have to look at it. It's a good point. I don't recall that, but maybe it was, I don't know.
I don't think it was an
But
override.
we're not asking for a new appropriation in that regard. We're just asking that the purpose be expanded.
Repurpose it.
Yeah, I'll look at that statute, because the statute typically deals with, the ones we've dealt with in the past, with town meeting votes. Whether, I don't know if it actually was a debt exclusion, whether there's extra money, whether or not you have to handle that differently. We'll have to look at that.
That's my only question is if it had to go to a vote to be used for that purpose, if we're going to use it for another purpose now, is that, because we got to put it before the taxpayer said we're going to spend this amount of money on this project, and now if we're going to do that differently, I know going to town meeting takes care of it, but my question is, would it also have to be a vote? I don't know if that's making sense or.
I know you can repurpose money that was approved at town meeting, whether or not if it's approved via debt exclusion falls under that same statute. I'll take a look at that.
Okay.
I'd be surprised if it had to go back to.
So for the time being, can we authorize either a single article combining both appropriations?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any other discussion on that motion? There being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. If that's problematic in that it may have been and probably was a debt exclusion vote, and we can't repurpose it or we can't extend it without doing another ballot vote, then I'd suggest that we just move forward with the request from the citizens petition as a borrowing article.
Yeah.
So, but it would be preferable to repurpose the previous appropriation. Okay?
Mr. Chair?
Sean?
We missed my pet project again.
Oh, aha!
That was my, I have a few more.
That's all right, Selectman Kerrigan. I have it here on my follow-up notes
Okay,
right
thank
here.
you.
Yeah, no, as Mr. Chair, there are a few issues, as
Yep.
we indicated, this is, was the original draft, but the board has discussed it. So part
the other
of
one too,
the
the-
solicitor had been working on language for the bylaw change for the select board naming.
And the railroad?
In the
Yeah.
rail trail language, to make sure it was all legal, that we're working on those two articles as well, too. So just wanted to mention that once we get to the end here, that the select board article and the rail trail article was going to be added to this. Once we get the language straightened out, the board had already voted to do that. Two other issues that I have. We have a prior deficit in our property insurance with Maya, and I would like to ask if the board would put an article on for an unpaid bill, for FY19 unpaid bill. It would be in the amount of $34,640 to do that. And the second is also, which we, it's been a year into it, but we need to appropriate retro money for the Department of Public Works contract for the first year of the contract. It was settled just after town meeting last year, so that needs to be put on for the town the selectmen approve the contract, but the town needs to appropriate the first year as an article. Subsequent years could be put in the budget, so I'd ask if that article could be put on as well, too. And I know, we did have discussion initially on about the ALS study and the paramedic article. I think at this time, the thought was to try to kind of hold on that and look at it a little further. The Finance Committee is using a budget for July 1 with level funded revenues because of the situation we're in. So that was, I think, an initial estimate close to $500,000 to get that up and running. So it's something I think we were looking to maybe continue vetting out those numbers a little bit. If the state comes through with more money than we think, we're using level funded local aid right now. The governor's budget was much higher than what we had last year, so we thought we were in a good place in January. Come now, we're using level funded. Some of the kind of the information that's flowing that we may hear, it might even be a cut in local aid. So at that point, we would kind of be in a situation to maybe have to go back to town meeting and make reductions. But if a lot more money comes back in, there would be an ability to maybe go back to a special town meeting after the summer and maybe do that project or anything else that wasn't able to be done in this budget. So it is a very lean budget just to get the fiscal year started. Otherwise, we would have to go to do a 1/12 budgets that have to be approved by Department of Revenue. They'll only do it 1 month at a time, so we'd have to do July. If we don't have town meeting in July, we'd have to go back and get approved for August. If we don't get August, such and so forth. So I think the Finance Committee felt this was at least an opportunity to get a workable, level-funded budget to the townspeople and get started for July 1. And if the finance changes up or down, once the state budget is finalized, then we may have to decide to go back to town meeting to make further adjustments at that time. So just the thoughts to the board, if it's something we wanted to still pursue, if we wanted to kind of look at it further.
Okay, we're way ahead of ourselves now. Okay, first of all, do we need a vote to put the article on the rail trail as per,
I think we did.
subject to review by town council?
I think they was already done.
It's already been done.
Okay, so that makes sure, I just want to make sure it is on the warrant. And Sean's pet project, we already voted as a board to put it on the warrant, so that's going to be on the warrant. I will be opposed, but had to get that shot in.
In town solicitors putting together some language, I think he may suggest 2 articles, so if the board just to be aware of that, there might be 2 articles.
How much is that going to cost?
Get a bulk rate.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Ed?
I don't have any problem with Selectman Kerrigan's I really don't think that this particular year is a proper year for it, so I mean, I'm kind of opposed to having that be on the warrant article. I have no problem revisiting that article next year. I'm talking in regard to the select person. I'd be inclined to make a motion to remove that article, if it would be seconded.
I'll second that.
Okay, I'm going to say that I am very strongly opposed to the article, but in fairness to Selectman Kerrigan, if he hadn't gotten the support he did at an earlier meeting to put this on the article, he would have had the opportunity to get signatures on a citizen's petition and put the article on the warrant that way. And changing at this point, to me, I'd rather just defer to town meeting and let them make their decision. So I will actually be voting against Selectmen.
He hasn't got a second yet, though.
Yes, he did. John
Oh, you
seconded.
seconded, John? Okay.
Okay, so I hope I'm not confusing this. I don't support the article, but I think it's, to take it off the warrant now and deny the proponents the opportunity to get signatures and put it on the warrant isn't, to me, I'm not comfortable with that. So there's a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? And the motion is to remove the article. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed.
Opposed.
The article stays on the warrant.
Thank you, Mr.
And I hope it loses at town meeting.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thanks, Ed. I don't know who my friends are.
You should be thanking me.
I hope my wife's watching at home.
Okay, Rail Trail Select Board, the DPW union contract, we need a motion to put that on the warrant.
And an unpaid bill. Mr.
Well,
Chairman.
one at a time.
All right. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we put the funding for the year one of the DPW contract on the town warrant.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. I'm sorry, Ed, you were in favor? Okay. I'm not used to watching TV at Selectmen's meeting. That's okay. DPW, the unpaid bill.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we authorize a warrant article for an unpaid bill to MIIA in the amount of $37,000?
$34,640.
$34,600.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
Just for the record, $34,640. None.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Unanimous. The only other thing that we've got open is the ALS conversation. I'm very strongly in favor of developing a paramedic service for the town of Clinton, but given the conversations we had with the Finance Committee and the situation that we have with the state budget, we're not even going to know what our state aid is until July 31st at the earliest. So we don't know, even with the recommended budget from the Finance Committee, whether we're going to be making additional cuts later on in the fiscal year. So I think we need to table that subject until, at least until we know state aid figures and have a better sense of where we're headed going forward.
I concur.
So is everyone comfortable with
Yes.
not putting that on the warrant?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the warrant as amended?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Town budget update. Sean and I and the town administrator, Mike Ward, met with the finance subcommittee of Chairman Tumalo and Bob Latini, and they rained on our parade. They're recommending what they consider a conservative budget. It's basically a level-funded budget with some increases that can't be avoided. It's set up to allow us to go into town meeting with a balanced budget, presuming level-funded state aid. But it has some safety valves built into it if state aid is reduced of any serious consequence up to 10%. One of the safety valves is leaving some free cash available for future appropriation if it's needed, and the other is increasing the Finance Committee Reserve Fund by an extra $250,000. So the reserve fund would be $450,000 going into this fiscal year, which those two factors would allow for us to absorb not a 10% cut, but help us deal with the consequences of a 10% cut in state aid. And if state aid is level funded, that's what we were saying about being able to, at a subsequent special town meeting, do something to address the concerns that got deleted earlier in the budget. Those were that's the basic outline of how they developed the budget, and I support it. I think John supports it. It's not the greatest thing, but state aid is going to be reduced. It's not, we had anticipated a large increase based on the governor's recommendation, and I think level funding in state aid is an optimistic projection. So I think this is the best we can do going into a very unknown fiscal year. So I'm recommending the budget that the Finance Committee presented.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that the Board of Selectmen adopt and support the budget recommendations of the Finance Committee.
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion?
No, Mr. Chair, just to echo what you said, it's a real double jeopardy this year. I mean, they were finally going to start getting school funding right, which frankly has been many unfunded mandates. So they finally had some mechanisms to get that right, and now not only is that gone, but there's a good chance we're going to take another hit as far as local aid. So I want to thank Mr. Tomolo and his board for working hard on this, and it's very much still a work in progress, but it's the best we have right now, and we're going to have to move forward with it.
And I do want to compliment the Finance Committee and Mr. Tumalo for their work in getting us to a place where we can be comfortable going forward. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any other discussion? There being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, unanimous. Administrative business, Michael, do we have none? Old and new business, landfill stage 1 final cover construction contract award.
And Mr. Chair, the Superintendent of Public Works is here on Zoom to speak to the board about this request.
Chris, you have the floor.
Thank you. This past week, we opened bids for the phase 1 portion of the landfill closure. It's a 10-acre closure. The total landfill is about 26 acres, so a little bit, around a third of the landfill, roughly. The bid came in at $1,456,414, which is a bit below our engineer's estimate. And the money for this project has already been appropriated at previous warrant articles at the 2 previous town meetings, so we have the money already available. It's coming out of the landfill reserve fund, which, if you remember, is we've been putting money in the reserve fund for several years to pay for this project and also pay for the pond dredge. This is the phase 1 of the landfill. A little bit with ET&L Corporation. They're out of Stone, Mass. They actually had completed the waste removal project for us last year along the railroad tracks. I'm very familiar with the company and very comfortable with them. So I would recommend, and the engineer actually recommended award to ET&L Corp from Stowe, Mass. $1,456,414.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chair, I move that we award the contract for the Stage 1 final cover project of the landfill to ET&L Corporation out of Stowe for the amount of $1,456,414.
I'll
there-
second that.
Any discussion?
Second. Oh, there's already, I have no discussion.
No discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Chris. Unanimous. Next item is Candidates Night at Town Hall Auditorium on June 8th.
Yes, Mr. Chair, there was a request, there's going to be a community forum for candidates on June 8th. The group that was putting it on was looking for locations, and based on distancing with the Town Hall Auditorium, they were asking if they would be allowed to come in and be able to have that extra space to separate and film the meeting to be put out to the public after that night. So I think with the Board of Health allowing buildings to start opening up again, if that would be something that would be the board would allow for next week.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we authorize the use of the Town Hall Auditorium for a candidates' night on June 8th, 2020.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I'll be abstaining
Okay. Not from Candidates Night.
from this vote.
Yeah. I want to make a note that the town moderator for town meeting will actually be the moderator for Candidates Night. So he'll get the opportunity to explore the hall and have a sense of how it's not going to have the same numbers of people, but he can visualize how it would operate with social distancing. Is there any other discussion? There being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Sean's abstaining,
Abstention.
so 401. Next item on the agenda is Finance Committee Reserve Fund Transfer for Property Insurance. Michael?
Mr. Chair, again, similar to the unpaid bill in FY19, we are also short in our Maya insurance for FY20 on the amount of $34,374. So asking for the board approval to go to the Finance Committee for that balance. Going forward in FY21, did ask for additional funding to cover all our insurance obligations, and the Finance Committee did support that. So hopefully we should be good going forward July 1, and this will bring us all up to date with any of our liabilities for our premiums on the property insurance and liability insurance, and workers' comp too. They're all kind of all three lumped together with Maya.
Thank you. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, I move that the amount of money be requested of the Finance Committee for the reserve funds transfer for property insurance.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Bond anticipation note bid award, Michael?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Just grabbing that paperwork, yeah. Thank you for that last vote, and thank you on this issue, Mr. Chair. Just to go forward, the town treasurer has gone out to bid with our bond advisor and asking for the board's support for a bond anticipation note for $2,168,000 as a temporary borrowing in order to cover any expenses that have been expended against those authorizations. And he did provide a list of the projects that are being funded from this in the packet. They were able to get a really good rate. I think the rate was about 1%. So in order to borrow at that level, I don't think we've ever gotten anything that low. So he was pretty happy. It's going to be a small interest payment, but it will help get us through the remainder of the spending on these projects, and then in the future he will go out to do a permanent bonding once these projects are done. We can't go out too early until the projects have been sufficiently spent, or else there's an arbitrage payment fine that you would pay for borrowing money that you're not spending. So the bond anticipation note would get us through that period.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Michael, who are we awarding the contract to?
It was to...
Hilltop Securities?
Have you got, well, why don't you make the motion?
Sure. I move that we,
Newburyport 5 cents Savings Bank.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we authorize the anticipation note for bid awards to Newburyport Savings.
I'll second that motion.
Newburyport or
Newburyport.
Yeah, Newburyport
okay.
5 cents Savings Bank. Yeah.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? There being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous.
And I do have the note itself and paperwork for the board members to sign prior to leaving tonight. Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is town meeting location. What's the pleasure of the board?
I think it's a very strong and good idea. We have the town meeting right in the town hall. I think it'd be better access for the senior citizen, be just as comfortable as anywhere else. I think the building is more than adequate to handle it.
Is that a motion, Mr. Butler?
Yes, it is.
Is there a second to that motion?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Discussion.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of issues to discuss. There was quite a heated discussion last week. I hesitate to bring it up, but what the heck, about the issue of checking people's temperature and whether people needed to submit to that check, and the legality and constitutionality of barring people from town meeting if they either refused to be checked or had a high temperature. I believe that you cannot bar, I don't think we could bar someone from a registered voter from town meeting because they had a temperature or because they refused to have the temperature checked. So I would be inclined to say that we probably shouldn't check temperatures. So I'm just going forward, if we're not going to check temperatures, I think for everyone's safety, the meeting should be outdoors. So that's,
Okay.
I'm going to vote against Mr. Busnell's motion.
I'm in a similar spot. Even if the checking temperatures, I think that's going to be something the Board of Health will give us advice on what we're going to do. But even if we do check temperatures, I don't think, upon reflection, I don't think the answer is to bar people from the meeting. But I think what we would want to do is if we could find another area where people that, if someone had a high temperature, they're still adamant they wanted to attend the town meeting, could we accommodate them by finding an area that would keep them isolated and away from everybody else? And if we start going down scenarios like that, being outside does seem to make more sense in that regard. So I will most likely vote against this, and I am still in favor of the meeting being outside, understanding all the extra logistical issues that we'll have. I still think it's the safest option.
I want to say that what we're voting on tonight is the location of town meetings. Safety health guidelines or regulations about how town meeting proceeds is outside of our jurisdiction. The authority to implement regulations on utilization of the hall is a domain, in this circumstance of a public health emergency, the domain of the Board of Health. If we vote to hold town meeting at Town Hall or at Veterans Field, either one is subject to their regulations, not ours. We can't implement health guidelines as a regulation in barring people from entrance, no matter what site it is. That is the domain of the Board of Health. if anyone has that ability. I think, given this time and these circumstances, the last thing we should be doing is creating a whole bunch of unknowns. How does the town clerk manage that office's responsibility at an outside location? The core group of people who have been coming to town meeting every year are going to be negatively impacted by changing a location that they're not familiar with and their ability to get there. There are a host of unknown circumstances that no matter how well we plan, we can't plan for adequately for a new site like that. I'm strongly opposed to the alternative location, and I'm also curious what the town moderator's perspective is on this and his preference for where the location is, because once this warrant is posted with a location, he has the ability and the authority to change the location to one he deems acceptable for public safety. So whatever we do here isn't final, can be changed by the moderator after consultation with us, the Board of Health and the Police Department. I don't think we're serving the public well by creating a whole bunch of unknowns and discouraging a large part of our population from even trying to come to town meeting. But I defer to the wisdom of this board.
Mr. Chair, just some background. This past Friday, town moderator Ed and I we were here for some Zoom practice and took a look inside. Like everything, there were some real challenges. It's a wonderful space, but we had just spitballing. Do we do every fourth seat? What happened? And map it out where people sit down. Do we allow people to show up if you've been quarantined with your wife and adult child, and there's 3 seats there? Do we do a jigsaw puzzle around there? It's what if there's a ballot vote? We can't really turn any people away. If we're just going with the governor's bare recommendations of masks and 6 feet, that space fills up pretty quick. I mean, I know there's talk about the state letting us reduce the quorum, but I think at a certain point, to play devil's advocate, we have to think, are we trying to get this by as quickly and as tightly as possible, or are we trying to make it accessible to as many people as we can? And I guess that's a philosophical thing that people are going to have to decide. But what we could say that we're keeping with tradition, and maybe that will appeal to seniors, but we're also going to make them sit in a room with maybe 100 other people for an hour or 2. So we talked earlier about maybe this is the time to try new things, and I see every day in the paper that other towns are revamping how they're doing this. And maybe if we do it at a different location, we can also look at how we publicize it. If we could do a video with the moderator going over the warrant and explaining the article so people aren't coming in cold. Things that maybe we should have been doing all along. I'm sure we can make it work in there, but it's going to be more of a challenge than I think some people think. So, I don't know.
And Mr. Chair, I can follow your logic. I see your point, but on the same token, there may be people that are nervous about attending coming into a building that could be potentially filled with 200 people. I think that might be something that could keep people away too. So I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just saying that there's a lot of unknowns, and I agree with you 100%. Doing this at Veterans Field is logistically going to be a lot more difficult, but when you just weigh all these unknowns, I'm just more inclined to lean on the side of safety first. And we will, if we do end up doing it outside, at least we will have some other towns who have already tried this, that we can look at some of the lessons that they learned, what worked, what didn't work. And since I've kind of been advocating for this path, I will obviously be available to help out in any way that I can if we do that it might, maybe more people would be comfortable coming because they'll feel safer being outdoors and not being indoors.
Do we know what the moderator's preference is for a location?
I don't want to speak for him, but and Sean can attest to this as well. Just in conversations we've had with him, he has indicated that he would prefer to do it at the town hall.
Okay. Do we know what the town clerk's perspective is on this?
I don't know. I haven't get any feedback from her on preference. I did reach out to her about logistics, about the possibility of doing it, because I know that was a kind of a deal breaker. And she had indicated that she would be able to do her job as long as she had one of her assistants at her office at the town hall, and as long as she can communicate with that assistant if she had any issues that she had to get on the computer. So the only concern for that is just she would have to have somebody at her computer at the town hall and be able to contact her via cell phone or phone or whatever to be able to, if any issues came up where she had to get on her computer to look something up.
Have we given any thought to, at an alternative location, the logistics of a sound system so that participants can hear what's going on, or seating arrangements?
There's a new PA system at Veterans Field. So we still have to talk to Russ if we end up going that route. But I would imagine we would be able to leverage the PA system that exists at the high school field, and there are functioning bathrooms there. And I mean, some towns have even taken the approach of having dedicated spots in adjacent parking lots for elderly, that, they give them paddles so that they can give their yes or no vote from their cars, because I know because we're going to be doing this towards the end of June, so, I mean, with our luck, we get out like a heat wave. There's a lot of different things that we would need to plan for, no doubt. But to your question about the sound system, I believe we should be able to leverage the PA system that's at Veterans Field.
Okay, we say the end of June, it's in 2.5 weeks, town meeting is scheduled for. What do we do with inclement weather, rain, excessive heat? Are we talking about a car town meeting or a seated in the field town meeting?
Mr. Chairman, about the weather. If the weather is bad, the moderator can do exactly what he does at Town Hall when there's not a quorum. He can say, it's raining, we're going to move this town meeting to such and such a date. I mean, I'm wondering if we're ever going to vote on this. I mean, the town moderator, you just said he has the ability, if he doesn't like our decision, to change it. I say if we decide to hold it outside and he doesn't like that, then let him change it.
Well, I would defer, personally, I would rather spend the time to have this conversation for as long as it takes so that everyone feels comfortable with their vote. And I don't believe we are prepared. If we need to delay town meeting because of weather, it's scheduled for the 22nd. Are you going to still delay it at the same location?
Well, that's what I would do.
Yeah, okay.
Unless the weather report said it was going to rain again tomorrow.
And have we inquired with the school department and the facility department about their ability to, or permission to utilize the field?
I can't imagine that the school department would refuse this. To you?
When's the next meeting of the school committee?
Mr. Chairman, I'll double check this, but I believe the school at a meeting had authorized us to use the field. And but my larger point is you're kind of asking us about logistical questions that we haven't decided on a course of action yet. So, why would you're eventually going to come to a question that we're not going to have an answer for at this meeting because we haven't made the decision on whether we're going to Veterans Field or to the town hall. Once we have a direction, then we we can start to figure some of these things out.
Well, I've already come to questions that don't have answers, and so some of the answers I've received, I don't like the idea of going contra. If the town moderator, who is responsible for managing the meeting, prefers to have the meeting in town hall, I think this board owes him some deference in that regard. That's my opinion. I'm entitled to my opinion.
Oh, yeah, but, and here's what I think. Well, go ahead, Ed.
Well, I'm just, what you made reference that you asked some questions that haven't been answered. I'm just curious, what questions have you asked that you haven't received an adequate answer?
Not an adequate answer on, I asked whether it's a car meeting or in the field meeting.
It's not a car meeting the way I envision it. It's a meeting in the field, but if there are special circumstances, either elderly or people that, if, say, for example, if we are doing temperature testing and somebody tests at a high temperature, we probably don't want to expose them to other people. Maybe we'd ask them to go in their car, but mainly for elderly who may be exposed to, the temperatures and the climate. The other towns have adopted a scenario where they're allowed to go to their car for the meeting, and you just have to figure out a way for them to get the sound of the town meeting that they indicate their votes through with panels, or with we hand out the town meeting, the colored papers that they would raise, and then the moderator would just have to count the field, and then also count anyone that was identified as in a special section of the parking lot. But it would 90% be an on the field town meeting, with the exception of anyone that had to, for health reasons, had to be protected from if there was a press of heaters or something like that.
And again, I'm curious how, I understand you got to have a location before you have answers, but how would the moderator engage with people sitting in a car in the parking lot with participants on the other side of him in the ball field? And how do the people in the parking lot hear the moderator speaking? I agree with Mike. The conversation's going on too long. If anyone has any objection, I'd like to move the question.
I have no objection to moving the question.
Okay, the motion was to have it at town hall. All those in favor of having town meetings scheduled for town hall indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
I'm going to say aye out of deference to the town moderator. I know it's a heavy lift. I just think there's going to be some real challenges here, and I would urge him, and if Ed wants to keep looking at this, to still consider that other option.
Okay.
Your vote is aye?
Yeah, just because
All those opposed? Wait, I'm running the meeting now?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
We moved the question.
Discussion's over.
Discussion's over. All those opposed?
Opposed.
Okay. Motion passed 3-2 with the encouragement to pursue the other, make some more inquiries, look for more information. Maybe you can get the moderator to change the location to the field.
My point is, if we're not all in favor of this, I don't think we should be fighting each other over where this thing's, we're going to have enough challenges if we're all in favor of it there, so.
Well,
I
think it's
agree with
perfectly
that.
fine.
But the motion's been made, seconded,
So what
and
do you
discussed and voted on. All right.
There's a lot of logistics to work out. I mean,
Either way.
Let alone logistics of having a meeting 2.5 weeks from now at a place we never had. There's just a lot of logistics to work out. I think,
This is the most feasible.
It's done.
Okay.
It's over.
Are there any committee reports?
No, I don't know if this counts as cable, but I want to thank Ed and Jeff Swan and Elston and Mike for coming up with the solution that to make this hopefully audible on the internet.
Definitely better.
Yeah, it's a lot of trial and error, more error than success, but I appreciate them staying with it and coming up with this.
I agree, but I also want to include Selectman Kerrigan in that participation.
I was the failure in the...
No, I'm sorry, to your point, Mr. Chair, I just want to say, like, this was Selectman Kerrigan's this was his initiative. I think
And I'm here tonight.
All we did is, like, kind of help out at the very end. But Selectman Kerrigan was responsible for this. I didn't even know what Zoom was before he started talking about
Oh, thank you, Sean.
Bill still doesn't know.
Yeah, I still don't know. Thank you, Ed. Thanks, everybody, for what you did to get this to work. All we need now is a bigger TV. That's
All we,
all right, are there any other committee reports?
No.
Our next meeting, unless something comes up that needs action, is the 17th. Town meeting is the 22nd at Town Hall, and the election is the 29th. Ed, you look like you wanted to say something?
I just thought of something, very quickly, in regards to the West Ledge lighting issue that we discussed a little bit ago, have we sent a letter out to that company indicating that we want them to finish the lighting and that we're going to start it if they haven't, if they're not going to do it?
No, letter has not gone out because some of the review we did didn't indicate whose responsibility it was. It was a complete gray area. I wasn't convinced that it was their responsibility. The whole project was closed out, so we sent a letter out, but I talked about it with the town administrator. We need to do some more digging. I wasn't basically, I went down to the planning board to review the documents. I didn't see anything in there where they had the responsibility. No, they weren't further there.
Okay, we'll have that on our agenda for the next meeting.
Okay.
Good.
And just a footnote to the agenda for the next meeting is, we're still waiting for the legislation to pass, but it's believed that the legislature is going to authorize towns to reduce their quorum to 10% of whatever the existing quorum is.
so it'd be to 20
And
people?
we could reduce it to 20 or any number in between 20 and the max of 200. We can't increase basically the quorum, but we can lower it. But the vote has to be a majority vote by this board, and it has to be approved by the moderator. We're not going to debate it tonight. I'm just putting it on notice that it'll be on our agenda in 2 weeks.
And I think he'll be here. He's at least...
And he's planning on being here as well.
Super.
The point of the mechanics of it is if we say 20 and he says 50, then it's going to be 200, unless one or the other party decides something different. So that's why it's important for him to be part of the conversation and a participant in the decision. So at our next meeting, we'll be doing that. There any other action by the board?
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous? Thank you, and thank you again for everybody for getting us into the next century with technology. I know what Zoom is now.